Hi, I'm Shira Carpel.
And I'm Shayna Gaunt, and we're board-certified behavior analysts. At How to ABA, we provide practical resources, community, and support to ABA professionals. In each episode of our podcast, we will be having real conversations with real people, sharing real stories about ABA.
We'll share relevant strategies and actionable tips that will make us all better ABA practitioners. It's the ABA content you need that you're not going to learn in a textbook. Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm super excited to introduce today's guest. We have Patricia Williams with us, and Patricia has been a longtime member, very active in the community, very willing to give to other members, which is super amazing because it's exactly the type of community we want to facilitate. And Patricia is a BCABA, so she works as an assistant behavior analyst supporting students with autism in an international school in Jamaica. So we're super excited to have you. Welcome, Patricia.
Welcome, Patricia. Hi.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I bring all the warmth from the Caribbean, all the sunshine and palm trees, as you said. And it's good to be here. Good to be part of the community.
Thank you. So if we could start by just tell us how you got here. Like, how did you become a BCABA? What interested you? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so it started with me being a general classroom teacher in a high school, all about 30 years ago, and not managing in the high school. That pushed me with the students because of the behaviors. Because there was always 6 or 7 kids in every group of 50 kids that couldn't get the work done and would disrupt the entire class. And I've seen over the years that that's a pattern that pushed me to go do special ed diploma. And then when I got that, I started a resource room in that high school, which was really an amazing, they allowed me, which is really phenomenal for a government high school in the Caribbean, to allow me to have a resource room, run it, raise funds for it, and get the support of both the Ministry of Education and my principal and my department. So that went really well. And then personal issues, I left and started my own school. And it just so happened that a lot of kids with autism came to my school. I had no experience with kids with autism before that. But if you have a small private school in Jamaica or in the Caribbean, you tend to find that parents would bring their kids because it's not easy to get them into a mainline school. And that's where my journey began. And without any training and just my teacher training, I was able to, stimulate speech. And I thought, I have a skill here. And then I actually signed up for, many years later, I actually signed up for the Massachusetts, UMass, behavioral intervention, not knowing all of what it entailed to become a behavior analyst, but they had all that training embedded in the tasks and in the courses. So once you signed up, you just got to be exposed to what you needed to be exposed to. And then you ended up as a behavior therapist or behavior analyst. So
that's incredible.
It just happens to we have BCBAs in Jamaica. So it wasn't hard to get a supervisor from Jamaica to supervise me.
That's great. I like how you said that you just came upon this journey because you had, there was that need for decreasing negative behavior with high school students. And, you're right. There's so often times that there's, a handful of kids in high school or more than that who just get lost and don't know where to go. So it's incredible that, that's where your journey started. And then you just ended up by chance in the autism community.
Yeah. And I still work with high school students. I still... not past grade 9, but definitely from 7 to 9. So,
and I'm curious to hear what it was like to get your supervision hours. Was it a challenge? Like, how did you find that? Because was it remote? Was there anyone local who could mentor you?
Yeah. So finding somebody that I can afford. So I was telling you about my school and how generous this school is. They actually paid for my supervision hours.
Wow.
For my BC, for this level. And then my supervisor, who I really have to share about, she not only did what the supervisor is supposed to do, she came, she watched me, she guided me, but it became a partnership.
I love that.
So the school now knows that she's my supervisor. And so we refer directly to her because she and I work together in this partnership to plan for kids, make treatment plans, pass it through, and then parents will go to her and speak to her and stuff like that. So it's really become a collaborative effort. And the school paid for it. They bonded me for 2 years, which wasn't a problem. I was working there anyway. And as far as on-the-ground supervision, what I did with the kids in the classroom counted as unsupervised hours. And what my supervisor came and watched me do and what we discussed, that counted for supervised hours. So it was not a hard process. Not a hard process at all. Facilitated by the school and, of course, by my supervisor.
That's great.
It makes such a difference when you're supported and when you feel like it's not an uphill battle to get the things that you need done.
Yeah. And I just finished the master's in education. I wanted to just share about that for a while.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes. So I've just graduated with the master's in education. And I want to say that I wasn't quite sure what UMass was doing, because what they did was they seemed to have combined the behavior courses with the education courses to produce this degree. But somewhere along the line, the two things came together in that I was able now to use the education part of it and the creating of units, curriculum units, for planning for kids with autism. And it has especially proved to be effective in social skills planning, with the kids that are high functioning and can think through what their end goals are and why they want to get this particular skill. So I really have to say that I was wondering about this education part and understanding about inclusivity, diversity, planning curriculum units, but that has proven to be an amazing tool in my toolkit as a behavior therapist. I just wanted to add that in.
So true. I have also a master's in education, even before I got into the field of ABA. And I see people coming into the field with, a master's in behavior, which definitely has its pros and cons, but having that background in education in addition to the expertise in behavior is just like invaluable, especially when you work in a school and when you're doing a lot of like group lessons and instruction and you want to go beyond like the typical clinic style ABA. It's true. It's such a good skill set to have.
Yeah, I didn't understand where they were going with it. And I said to my professor, it seems like nobody brings the two parts together, but it's really up to the student to do it. And then the professors were willing to work with me and allow me to do my capstone with a student on the spectrum. And that was an incredible process as well. So
that's great. So oftentimes, dealing with, or ABA, everyone thinks, oh, well, it's dealing with negative behavior. But most of the time when you're dealing with negative behavior, it should be about teaching, right? Teaching those replacement behaviors. And sometimes that gets lost.
Yeah, I think you're right in that. I think that's what helped me, untrained as a behavior therapist, to work with my kids with autism, just knowing how to teach. And then now with the additional, okay, so these are schedules of reinforcement and this is, punishment is left until, so those things have really. So I want to bring up one of the things that really stood out to me before we started, when we were in our pre-discussion.
Absolutely.
Which is on my journey, just recently, How to ABA did it was a workshop on compassionate treatment, compassionate ABA. That is so impacting for me because the Caribbean culture is a kind of old school culture, where we can be rough and tumble with our kids. We go to punishment first. And it's almost like being the bigger body in the room. You can so easily tend to force a child to do what you want them to do just because you're bigger and because you have control. And that was one of the most impacting workshops for me, because it takes a lot of patience to endear a child and reinforce a child until they are willing to be compliant and work with you and give you the joint attention, rather than we have to get this done. We have to get this done in a particular time, and you have to get this. That has just so totally radically changed the practice of behavior with my kids. It takes a little longer, takes a lot more patience, but I think it was an excellent. And anybody who hasn't done that workshop, I would encourage them to do it. I can't remember what the name of it is. I know it was compassionate treatment or something like that.
Yeah, that was with Megan Miller, compassionate treatment with behavioral something or other with kids. And I see that too. So, I got into the field 25 years ago, and, I came from a background of it's ABA, and I was told, okay, 25 years ago, walk into a room. If a child's crying, they don't know you from anybody, make them sit at the table. I don't care if they're crying. I don't care if they're screaming. You're the bigger person in the room. Make them sit at the table. And as soon as they take a breath and they're quiet, reinforce great quiet. And, I look back at that, and I had no other training besides that. And, we got compliance eventually, and it was awful the way we got there. And it breaks my heart to look back at that, but we didn't know anything else back then. And I really love that everyone's coming out and talking about that now. And they're talking about how we need to be more compassionate as a field, but also just pairing, and the whole art of pairing. So yes, it takes a little bit longer, but if you can establish a relationship, then, you're not seen as the bigger person in the room, and then you can throw your strength around. It's really about respect. And, I respect you and you respect me. And that's the way it should be in a relationship. Right. And kids will grow to do things for you because they like you, versus I'm scared of you. And that's huge. And that's not just with ABA, but that's with teaching too. Right. And it's definitely evolved over time. And I really like the way that's going.
Yeah. One thing I've learned over the years, especially now being more in education, is that I did come at it from that perspective at the beginning, like 10 years ago. But as I've evolved, I see the importance of the relationship. And I almost joke that there are certain teachers in my school that when the kids go into their class and they develop a relationship with them, they don't even need a behavior plan anymore. Like, those teachers are kind of making me obsolete, which is great, right? And it's about developing that relationship. And it's the kids that are struggling in the classroom. Sometimes you need to look at the relationship and what's really going on. And it's not just about the compliance, but it's about, how they feel, as non-behavioral as that sounds.
It's a game changer. Hands down, it's a game changer.
We'll be doing another webinar in the fall on compassionate care, but with parents, right? And when you're consulting to parents, making sure you've got that compassion there as well. So
that's a great segue into the other thing that I've been experiencing, which is one of the differences between, I think, the first world and the third world is that we don't have insurance that pays for therapy services. So we have to, and parents cannot afford even $40 US per session for 3 sessions a week. That's just out of the reach of quite a few of our average earners. So what I've learned to rely on heavily is teaching my parents what to do at home. And teaching my teachers what to do in the classroom. And that idea of compassionate care, compassionate treatment, it extends to the parents as well, because they need to, I find that my parents and myself as a parent, we need a lot of reassurance that we're doing the best we can. And we need a lot of reassurance that we are not the worst parents in the world. I don't know why that tends to be my default, but when I talk to my parents, there's a lot of guilt. And so they need that idea that, we're going to go from step 1 and we're going to go to step 2, and this is what you do. And I have found really that my parents are so open and so willing to learn. They want to learn. And so again, going back to what we were talking about with the planning, you can write a plan that a parent can understand, right?
You have to write a plan for parents to understand.
Yeah,
You can't have behavioral jargon. You can't expect them to know all the acronyms that we went to school for.
And they come back and they say, I mean, recently we've been doing some speech stim plans, some vocabulary, talking around the house. It's really simple stuff, not complicated. A few words that the parents think that they want to teach their kids. And then they come back and they say, I heard this word, I heard that word. Then now one parent is saying, oh, he said, daddy truck. So we're hearing 2 words. And they're like, I said, boy, by the time you're finished, you're trained.
How
That's
reinforcing.
amazing. That's so rewarding.
Yeah. So getting the parents involved is key here, because really and truly it comes down to one therapy session that they can afford maybe once a week. And then they have to go and do the work at home. So without giving them very complicated plans, I simplify it. We talk on the phone. I walk them through it, and we're getting the results. And I think that's going to be the way to go in the Caribbean. We have to get the parents to know what to do with their kids.
That's incredible. But you know what, Patricia, even with 40 hours a week of ABA, if you don't have parent follow through at home, it's still going to be really difficult to make any significant changes, right? So, having one session a week, but then having parent training or parent coaching, that's phenomenal, because the parents are involved. I mean, we see better progress, right?
Yeah. And I think I saw something about parent training on how to ABA. But if you have anything coming up like that, I will definitely be open to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is one of our most common questions. I think it's something that everybody sees is necessary and really needs support with. And especially over this year with like telehealth and everything moving towards that, people are really needing it even more. So we definitely try to share as much as we can. I think it does come down to, like you said, it's about building the relationship, being supportive, like not coming in from a place of judgment, and how you describe breaking it down. You take a large scale, break it down into smaller skills, and start with something that's doable. And parents will feel, as long as they're feeling supportive, that's really the best that we could do to kind of take them through the journey.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So we've spoken a lot, or, we do have conversations in our community. And I know we've talked about the concept of cultural sensitivity, right? Because when you come in with ABA, sometimes it doesn't always, the ethical code doesn't always align with the community that you're working with. And I think that you find that where you are. How do you resolve that? Jamaicans
can read, but they don't tend to like to read. So there's not a lot of exposure as far as ABA. There's not a lot of education on it. So I don't have to deal with preconceived ideas or misinformation on ABA. I find that I'm more in a position of having to explain what I do and how I do it, having to explain the risks and having to explain the benefits. So in a way, we have an advantage. I did sit in a workshop where the Ministry of Education had invited a parent to talk about interventions with her son who had autism. And her take on it was changing his diet. And that ABA was not the main way of helping him and did not work for her son. So in that discussion, after I raised questions to try to kind of mitigate the misinformation about ABA, but that is the only forum that I found myself having to, kind of push back a little. Parents really come with a very clean slate, and they are very trusting of who they consider to be trained professionals in the field. And I think we are coming in. ABA has been here in Jamaica for many, many years, many people. But I think we're coming in at a time where the practice of ABA is more compassionate and it's not offensive at all and very effective, very effective.
That's good. So what are some, challenges that are unique to where you are or what you practice?
Yeah, resources.
Yeah.
And education. one of the things that I'm in the process of trying to discuss is the possibility of us having some sort of screen for children who are at risk. Because what happens, if you can imagine a population of maybe 50, 60%, maybe even 70% of basic education, not necessarily knowing that if I have a baby who may have had a low APGAR score, I need to watch that child and look at the child's development and look at the child's speech. I don't think a lot of parents leave having a child and think or are even given something to read or that they can read and understand that these are some red flags. So that what could have been early intervention now becomes an 8-year-old who is not speaking, and you know how that or a 12-year-old who has never had therapy.
Wow.
So I have a 24-year-old parent. I know she won't mind me. A parent of a 24-year-old man who's never had ABA, who's never been to a therapist, whose pediatrician didn't tell the mother that he needed to have therapy or needed to be assessed. And so it's only in his later years she sent him for an assessment. Now he's 24, he's eloping, and we're just trying to manage day to day. So that is a good example of the challenges that we therapists face. And then the misinformation. So he's not talking because his tongue needs to be clipped was one thing that I heard. And this is a baby who had a low APGAR score, who was a blue baby, who was in the neonatal unit, who has a deformed skull and all of this. So, and the parent says, no, it's a problem with his tongue.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that parents feel really guilty. Do you think that has something to do with it as well? It's that parent guilt, or maybe even blaming themselves for things. And then, as a result, I'm just going to hide my child away because I just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
The opposite of here. We're here, every kid can get a diagnosis no matter what. It's almost like too prevalent. Like they're handing it out.
We need that. We need that. We need to figure
a happy balance.
We need to figure it out. And the only way that I can see is research. So I'm talking to a neonatologist from the hospital and one of the main hospitals here. And she's well into research, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get that off the ground and be able to at least give parents some sort of information and follow up on a cohort through a couple of years to say, okay, so here is those parents who have not been educated, they've not been told anything, and here's a group who have been educated, and here's the outcome of these neonates compared to these neonates. So
and also educating the professionals, right? They need to know what's available as a professional or a pediatrician or a doctor who sees the family to be able to know what's available and why they should be referring. I'm sure would be really important. So that's an awesome mission. And yeah, good luck. So a lot of our community is, people who have just gotten into the field who, kind of feel overwhelmed, who want the support. What advice do you have for someone who's just starting out in the field?
Subscribe to How to ABA.
That wasn't scripted.
You can edit that out if you want, but I really think, when in doubt, consult. The community, I am lucky enough, blessed enough to have a supervisor who is just, after supervising me for the BCABA, is now supervising me. And what I do is I work for her. Right? So she's not necessarily charging me. I am working for her. We're working together. We're collaborating. So having a supportive group and somebody that you can ask questions from and get good answers, people who know and are experienced in the field. That's how I get to be efficient. The parents are an important support as well, because they know their kids and they know what goals they have for their kids. I don't ever underestimate what the parents want. Other people who have experience in the field, who may not necessarily be behavior therapists, but they also understand how behavior works, they're also valuable. I have teachers in my school that I consult with all the time and who give me very good advice. They've had plans that work. I want to know how those plans can work and if they can work better. So that's also a source. And then a lot of reading. If I have a child that comes in and is aversive to handwriting, I would go to a research paper and see what's been done with handwriting. If I have a child who's bedwetting, I will go and read about what has been done with bedwetting. I may not take on that case or that client, but if somebody's done research and they can show that it worked, then I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I just go to the research paper, I look at what has been done, and some things. Let me give you an example. On your website, you did something about tolerating birthday parties, right? So you're looking at that stimulation that the child doesn't want the song sung, they don't want the noise and all of that. That, to me, is a good basis for tolerating loud noises, tolerating sudden sounds or whatever. So I went there, I saw what you guys had. It wasn't enough for me. So I had to go do more research, because I'm looking at because I have a little girl who she went to school for 2 days and then she couldn't manage. And the entire time was noise. And so I had to figure out then, how are we going to desensitize her? Or are we going to let her get noise canceling headphones, or are we going to give her a space where when the noise gets too loud? And so with the research that I did, plus what you guys had, what we decided was she'd need a quiet place. The research shows that noise canceling headphones are not the best because it doesn't acclimatize them to the noise necessarily. And so it puts them in a position where they always have to be dependent on the noise canceling headphones. And so what we discovered and what the research suggested is that we look at her noise tolerance. So she can tolerate noise that she makes. That was a good discovery. So if she's clamoring and making noises,
that's okay.
Have you guys noticed that as well?
Not really.
I noticed that with my daughter. She loves to talk. She just can't. She needs to have dead air filled. She'll chat away and whatever else. But not necessarily.
This student can tolerate the noise at a high level that she makes, but you make the same noise, and there's a time where she can't take it anymore. But communicating was a big part of it as well. She had to say to us enough, and then have a place where she could go, and then it's decreased her. Mom says that she is reacting 40% less to the noise.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's
such a good example of the field has all these principles available. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, and you need to understand what those principles are, whether it's reinforcement or chaining or any one of those things. And then just as a behavior analyst, have the skills to be able to apply it and individualize it. And, that's what we try to do in giving everybody the templates, right? And the descriptions and the basis for then taking it and individualizing it to your application to your students. And that's really where the skill is as well.
Yeah. One of the things that can get a little overwhelming, I'll say to our new BCBAs and BCABAs like myself, is that there is a lot of information and there's a lot to learn. I think you have to get comfortable with not knowing everything.
Yeah, it's huge.
I think you have to get very comfortable with just kind of being uncomfortable in your space. In other words, I don't think that you will ever, 25 years of experience you said you had, right, Shayna?
Yeah.
And Shayna and Shira.
Yeah. Yeah.
You still when I take part in your webinars, you guys are still learning from us who are in the webinars.
Totally.
You're still getting information. You're still open to information. So getting accustomed to just, okay, there's something new in the field. There's something I don't know. Let me just try to find out and put it into practice. So you have your basis BST. So you're gonna use that to teach, but there's always something else that you can learn because otherwise it becomes overwhelming and you really feel like you're not going to ever be competent.
Yeah. Absolutely. And that's where it comes down to, take a small chunk and recognize that there's a lot of information out there. Start here. With all our learners, we talk about systematic desensitization. We need to do the same thing, right? Okay, I'm going to learn this chunk of information. Unfortunately for the exam, I have to, memorize a million zillion things. But after that, specialize in one specific thing and then find mentors and find other people who can coach you along the way so that you can gradually grow your learning.
Yeah. And I think with that, just don't ever water down the fidelity of what you're doing. I think once you just stick to the basic plan of ethics and the basic fidelity of behavior, I think you can't go wrong. Just don't water it down. Don't compromise.
Yeah.
Don't bring in other things that are not behavior based. And I always have to keep going back to that because, the classroom is so dynamic. And you're dealing with pressures from parents and pressures, and you need time to observe, you need time to think, and you need time to plan, and you have to keep pushing back on the pressure to come up with a quick fix.
Yes.
So that behavior will be fixed, and it cannot work that way. And you have to really just dig deep and decide, look, this is what is best for the kid.
Yeah.
And you really are not going to change the fidelity of how we do observations and how we come up with treatment plans. And just to know that if the treatment plan does not work, you can go back and try it again. And it's all with no harm. We're planning no harm for our kids. So
it's definitely a process. I find that with teachers, they really want a solution, and teachers, they mean well, but from an old school background, they just want a punishment, right? Tell me where I can send him because he's not behaving, or what do I do when he's not behaving? And my answer is usually nothing. You do nothing because we don't have a plan, or, we have to figure it out, or just take data. And it's hard because in the moment they really want, a magic wand. And it's so true about knowing what you can offer and really sticking to it is so important.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Patricia. This was so helpful and so informative. One of the best things about the community is getting to know that there are people who come to us from all over the world, which always fascinates us. So we just love knowing that we're reaching people anywhere and everywhere, and that we're able to get to know you and help you in any way that we can. So thank you for being here, and thank you for just your general support.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I support you, and I will continue to support you and resubscribe, and I'll be there. So thanks for what you guys have done and making information accessible and creating a space for us to collaborate. It's been awesome.
Good. Well, thank you. And I'm sure we'll see you next week on our webinar.
Yes, hold on. This can be edited out, but no, next week I'm out of quarantine, and so I will join after. If I can, I will.
Okay.
All right. Because I travel to Jamaica the next day. Yeah, I travel to Jamaica the next day. So I have to get a lot done here.
Okay. That's okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Patricia, Thank you. This conversation was really great.
Thanks for joining today's conversation. Wherever you get your podcast, please go and subscribe, rate, and review so others can find out about us too.
For more from How to ABA, including free resources and ABA materials, visit our blog at howtoaba.com. And make sure that you're following us on social media for more practical tips and updates.